And welcome back to the House of Footy YouTube channel, where today we're going to be reviewing our season predictions for 2023. My guests today are the same guests from the predictions video. Obviously, we've got Jakson Bertoli. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I nailed everything. I'm confident, ready to do it again.
Brilliant. And Carl, how are you today, mate?
Yeah, this isn't going to be fun. This is not. Well, it could be fun. We're going to have a look at the best and the worst of the season, but it's still be interesting.
Well, I can assure you that we did get some things right. So there will be some things to celebrate in this video. There may also be some apologies that need to be made. But look, you don't have to apologize if you don't want to. We'll just go through each prediction we made, all the good ones, all the bad ones, and we'll see what happens. So basically in this video, we'll be going through first our ladders, and we're doing a little scoring system where we tally up the amount of points that each of us had each team away from where they actually finished, and whoever has the lowest point tally for that wins, but we'll get to that in a second. We'll also be doing our premiers, our runners-up, and our wooden spoon. And we'll also be doing all our awards as well. So the Brownlow, Coleman, Rising Star, and all the other ones that we predicted as well. So to get started, well, I think we begin with our ladder. And we'll do the points tally because I've tallied those up, and we'll see who had the best ladder prediction. So we had a few howlers amongst the three of us.
We had a many howler.
These are not my final predictions. I changed my personal predictions a long time after this, but unfortunately, these are the ones that are documented forever on the internet. So,
indeed. So I'll go with our third place getter first.
Okay.
There's one significant howler that wouldn't have actually made a difference in the end because they ended up losing by 12 points. And that is Jacko. So your most significant howler was obviously Richmond top, which we'll talk about in a bit. But
injury screwed me. The season failed me.
88 points in total. That's where you finish. Now
that's a lot. That's a winning score in AFL.
I'm sure it is. It's
not in this game.
Look, you'll look to better it next year, I think. But in first place, we have a tie, Cal.
Do we?
We do.
Wow.
Cal and myself on 76 points apiece, and as 76. I was calculating it, I knew it would be close, but we've managed to get the exact same score. Tiebreaker.
Who has the most correct? Who has the most correct spots?
I was going to say we could do whoever gets the most awards. We'll work that out later.
I think the video. Yeah, okay.
Up for discussion.
I won't remember to do that. But anyway, let's go back to the ladder and let's talk about a few sore points, I guess. So before we started the video, we all came up with one big successful position and one absolute howler that we had, and there were a few, so we only had to pick one. But Carl, do you want to go first? What was your big success of your ladder prediction?
The one I think I'm most proud of is my own club, Carlton. I believe you did get them in the right spot as well, Brando. So I'm sort of stealing your thunder a bit here. But the Blues in fifth was one that, from a bias standpoint, had to happen. Couldn't go another year without them making the eight. But I'm happy with that. The Blues, it was looking pretty ugly for a long part of the year. That could have been one that was well off. But, fifth in the end. We'll take the 0 points in our little game.
Successful season for our boys and a successful prediction as well. Jacko, did you get any bang on? Or...
I got one. I got one.
You got one.
I got one.
What do you got?
I got North Melbourne in 17th. Look, that's just one I was pretty happy with Clarko going in there, although he didn't even end up coaching most of the year. But I think it was a really good sort of reset year for them. They had ended up with Brett Ratton for a long time, but Clarko will come in. They've actually recruited very well. So we're recording this in the midst of trade season. So they've already brought in a few good names. I think they're going to look forward to years to come.
100%. And on that point, my successful one is the other bottom two team. I had West Coast at the bottom. I mean, probably to the disappointment of some West Coast fans that I got that one right. But, if they get Harley Reid in number one, he'll be a good addition to that midfield, and we'll see how they travel in the next few years. But yeah, I'm pretty happy that I got that one bang on. Cal, who did you have as your big howler for the year?
Yeah, we've sort of touched on we got a lot very wrong. We had a lot very wrong. I think.
Speak for yourself.
No, okay, I'll speak for myself in that case. But I think the one that we all absolutely buggered up was GWS. That was one really bad one. We all had them in 16th. And they've got to a prelim final. So there's not much worse than that. But I'll let Jacko follow in with his.
Just touching on the Giants, there is a big sound. They were very, very good. I don't know about you guys, but they're probably one of my favourite teams to actually watch play football. I'm sure there'll be a few things where we'll touch on them later, but I very much enjoyed them. Talking about Howlers, there's a couple to choose from. I am going to go with Richmond here. I was optimistic. There were a few things that obviously didn't go the way. I think Hopper didn't perform about as well as I wanted. Injuries there. And then this will come up later as well, but Tom Lynch's injury, he only played 4 games. I think that had such a detrimental effect on their season. And then, of course, you lose Dimmer halfway through the year. There's going to be no stability in that club. But at the end of the day, I can't make any excuses. I picked them to win both the flag and the minor premiership, and they've not even made finals. So set the story walking, buddy.
Doesn't happen often. That does not happen often.
Well, speaking of premiers and minor premiers, I think my howler speaks for itself. I had him in 10th, Jacko had him in 9th, and Cal had him in 8th. Collingwood.
And I'd do it again.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that anything I said about Collingwood was invalid at the time.
At the time,
I'm going to say it with chest. It was a reasonable assessment to have at the time. In saying that, they were bad. Absolutely unbelievable this year. Yeah. Nothing short of the best team in the competition. And they came out with the chocolates in the end, and I'll hang my hat on it, and I'll say I didn't even have them in the 8, and I hopefully won't be making the same mistake next year. You never know.
They were deserving.
You never know what can happen in an off season.
They were very much deserving premiers, but just like you, I'll hide behind my stats, and I will say with my whole chest, I stand by everything I said in the predictions video. I might do it again next year. I doubt it because they were, like you said, so very good this year. Hopefully Nathan Murphy's okay and he'll be good to go again next year. But look, 100%. At the end of the day, tipped in the missed finals. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. All right. Next up, premiers, runners up. Cal, you had Brisbane.
I had Brisbane beating Geelong, which I got one of the 2 grand finalists. But yeah, you had, everyone, I assume at the start of the year had Geelong up there, and they had a pretty down year. Not so proud of that tip. Brisbane, I thought they were going to have their year finally. Got within a goal. Good with that. Geelong, very disappointed.
Yeah, I also had Brisbane winning the flag. I had them beating Melbourne in the end, and I'm proud of that prediction because I pretty much stuck with that until the last couple of weeks where Melbourne were bundled out by the Baggers in finals. But that prediction kind of stuck throughout the year, and obviously Collingwood were just too good in the end, so didn't end up being right. Jacko
nailed it.
Brisbane runner up.
Brisbane runner up. Absolutely. We don't need to talk about anything else. But Brisbane runner up. Can't do it at the MCG.
And your premier was
the premier, which they were the people that beat Brisbane on the grand final day. But no, Brisbane were a very good team, a very solid team. But it's those doubts of whether they do it on the MCG, and their defence is just one of those things that you can't really trust. But I was pretty happy with that. I was pretty solid on that, like you said, all through the year. My premiers, I sort of dropped off by about round 6, I think. So it's nice to have one thing to hold on to.
Then we've got the wooden spoon. Now, we'll start with both of you, actually, because you have the same spoon. Or do you want to talk a bit about
that? Yeah, I think I'll say the same thing you said about Collingwood. I would stand by what I said at the time. It was a team coming into this year, apart from really Sicily and Dylan Moore and Bruce. Like, what experience did that team have? Newcomb stood up incredibly well. Will Day was moving into that midfield. He was sublime. Warple had his days, and the young kids stood up. Sam Mitchell, I think, is going to be a really good coach, and they were pleasantly surprising. But again, I don't think anyone would have looked at that sideways at the start of the year, tipping him to come last.
I echoed that pretty heavily. I didn't see I saw their list changes being too significant for them to be as impressive as they were. They're actually a very good team, particularly in the back half of the year. They beat, I think they beat Brisbane, they beat St Kilda, and they beat Collingwood off the top of my head. Like they had three massive, massive wins for a bottom four-esque side, call them. But they are a team that I really want to watch next year. They're going to be very, very exciting to watch. Such a young team coming up the ranks. Pencil them in.
Big time. It'll be very interesting to see where we all have them next year. Obviously, I had the Eagles, as I said before. I think I cited in the initial video, I said that I thought the gap between their veterans and their youngsters was too big for me. Yeah. And obviously now we're going to see, obviously they've had this influx of veterans leaving the club now, so we'll see what the transition's like. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with my prediction there. Now into the awards.
Before we move on to the awards, Brenda, I think there's another one where I think we all sort of, that raised a few eyebrows when we had it, but we all had the Bulldogs missing finals. I think that's might be worth touching on. Whether I don't know what I can't remember what the reasons you guys had for that were, but I think we messed up a lot of things. But I think that's something we actually landed pretty well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I was going to say the reason I had them out was I saw the growth of the teams jumping them was more than the Bulldogs would grow. And the Bulldogs, I wouldn't even say they grew. They're sort of just flatlined, particularly in like the last month. They looked so out of it. Ultimately needing a result in the last game that they won their last game, and then the Giants got over the line. But they just looked average. They looked average.
That seems like that's always what happens with the Bulldogs. The last month they just completely stagnate. And how many Brownlows has Bont been robbed of now?
He's got to get one.
With that last month. The team just lets him down in that last month every year, it seems like.
Yeah. Another team I wanted to talk about that we all got fairly wrong was the Fremantle Dockers. Obviously, Jacko, you had them 5th. I had them 4th. And Cal, you had them 7th. Jacko, I'll start with you. What do you think went wrong for them?
This is one that, like, almost, I remember distinctly, like, right after we recorded, I looked at that one, and that felt so wrong. Like, I don't know what it was about Fremantle, but I think I had them missing the air, like, not long after we recorded, but obviously that's not what's on the footage, but I don't know what their forward line just is so young and so raw. In saying that, Jai Amos this year was incredible. I think he probably wasn't too far off the rising star. But they're just, I think their team doesn't flow for me. Like, it just seems like 3 different game styles in their 3 different parts of the park. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year. I think Luke Jakson was actually really good for him this year, but it just didn't. They just need one solid game style, I think, running through that spine.
100%. Cal, what do you think they need to do to make that jump back up next year? Because what we saw in 2022 was a really good game style, and then it really tapered off, as Jacko was just saying. So what do you think they need to do?
Yeah, you mentioned last year they made a semi-final, so that they had the game plan to make another good run. Hence, we all had them in the 8. But as sort of Jacko was touching on, it just completely misfired this year. They were inefficient going forward, and they were beaten quickly on the break. I think that's where it really hurt them this year. They were too easily countered going forward. Their backs weren't able to get set up, and that's where it really fell apart for the Dockers. If they can fix that next year, then you've got a bit of room for optimism. But it is hard to see how sort of unimpressive they were. They got 10 wins this year. It is hard to see them make that jump. There's teams above them that will make a real good push. It could be another tough year for the Dockers.
100%. Another team we did a bit of a disservice to was St Kilda, who finished 6th and obviously they didn't win their first final, but were looking quite good for most of the year. Jacko and Cal had them 12th. I had them 14th. I'll start with you, Cal. What are your thoughts on how Ross Lyon's been able to come in and improve that side so quickly?
It's impressive. It was really impressive what Ross did this year, particularly utilising the smalls going forward. I really liked how well gelled the whole forward line was. In particular, not a small, but just singling out a player, Mitch Owens. I really, really like his year this year. He is going to be a star of the future. I don't think any of us really has had him in a sort of rising star or a breakout season sort of in discussions. He was really, really impressive this year.
Jacko?
Yeah. I remember back to when we recorded that first video, both Cal and I said that we thought it might take Ross Lyon a year to gel with the team. I thought this might be where he figures out who his players are, what happens, and get that all under his belt. But he just hit the ground running. I think what they did this year is what I sort of expected next year, and I don't think I ever saw him hitting the ground as quickly as he did and getting moving in his first season. But it was really, really impressive. Like Cal said, the likes of Mitch Owens, and he had those young forwards, Anthony Caminiti and Tim. Obviously, Tim Membry's not young, but it was just a sort of thrown together forward line most weeks. And then Cal Wilkie, what a season he had down back. It was something special.
No one would pick him for All Australian. No one would have picked him for All Australian.
He was unbelievable, and the scary thing is now that Ross has had this year under his belt.
Mhm.
What can he do
Who
next
knows?
year?
Who
Can they
knows?
improve on 6? Can they possibly break into the top 4? We'll see. The only other team that we got a little bit off the mark that is probably worth talking about, Port Adelaide. I had him 8th. Jacko had him 8th. Cal, you had him out of the 8 in 9th. They finished top 4. Obviously went out in straight sets, but had an amazing run mid-season. Jacko, talk me through that.
It was a really good run. They won a lot of good games. Obviously, the way they started that run, a bit controversial. I think it was a goal. Good old Ollie Florent. I have no words to just defend myself putting me in 8th. That's nothing but bias, and I'll sit here and say it comfortably. Sorry, Port fans, but that's about as high as I can comfortably put you on the ladder in a predictions video.
So what you're saying is next year they'll be in the exact same spot?
They'll be lucky to be in 8th.
Carl, what did you make of their form mid-year?
But yeah, to get 13 on the trot is, that's nothing to look over. They were probably the flag favourites at one point of the year. I think the reason I had them in 9th at the start of the year was I was so swayed by their poor performance last year. I wasn't sure if they could replicate the second half of last year again, and they did better. So I'll put my hands up for that one. I didn't even have him in the 8, which is pretty garbage.
100%.
Yeah, it's almost like not putting the Premiers in the 8. Imagine that.
Oh.
Just about, yeah.
All right, now we'll move on to the awards, and there are some interesting ones in here. I don't know how many we got bang on, but we'll wait and see. So we'll start with the Brownlow, and we'll start with you, Jacko. Who did we have?
Jeremy Cameron. He was on for it too. I think those first 5 rounds of the year, you could genuinely make a case that he would have been close. He got robbed round 1. The fact he didn't get 3 votes in that game, let's not talk about the Brownlow. Let's not turn this video into that. But look, it was a long shot. I think I said that in the video. He was the best player in the league last year. This year, he was the best player in the league for about 5 rounds. Him and Charlie both on track for 100 goals.
Yep.
Then he just dropped off, and what can you do? You can't win them all.
Yeah, exactly. Carl, who did you have in the end?
I had Clayton Oliver. I think that was a pretty popular pick at the time, and then he wasn't really ever in the mix. He was thereabouts, needed a really good back half of the year, and got injured and spent, I think it was up to 2 months on the sidelines. So I'm not going to say the injury cost him the Brownlow, but it was unfortunate.
Would have finished a lot better if not for the injury.
He would have.
Obviously, I had the captain of my club, Patrick Cripps. Probably a down year by his standards, but he still finished on 22 votes. So
it was a top 10. Yeah.
Easily top 10. 22 would have been enough for top 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a down year on his standards, but I mean, if he carries some more form into next year, he could easily be back into calculations the way he finished this year.
2024 Brownlow was all Errol Goulden, baby. It's Errol season.
Going early.
We'll be back in March, but I'd say at least one of us very well may have him.
He was robbed this year, I tell you.
He was sensational. The Coleman medal. I'll start. I had Tom Lynch. We talked about him a little bit before talking about Richmond. I mean, look, who knows what could happen if he played more than the 4 or 5 games he played. But I think, he could bounce back easily if he gets over whatever foot issue he has, and we'll see what happens when he comes back in. Jacko, you had Tom Lynch as well?
Yeah, I did. Pretty much echoing what you said. I feel like we've all said this a lot. Like, I wouldn't change what I said at the start of the year. He looked so good last year, and I think he would have won last year's Coleman if he didn't miss the month with that foot. But only playing 4 games this year, you can't really project what his season would have looked like. But I don't think anyone but Kerno was winning it this year. His consistency over the season was just incredible.
Yeah. Cal, you went with a rogue one. Talk us
Yeah.
through your choice.
Yeah, this was my smoky if I had to pick one, and I went with Ben King. And it's just there was like no injury as such to put that off. It was just a bad prediction. It's just a bad prediction.
He showed signs at times. We'll give
showed
him a little
signs.
bit of credit where it's due,
I
but
wouldn't call it Coleman level signs,
not at all.
but promise.
What's the VFL leading goal kicker award?
Yeah,
It was those
Yeah.
signs. It was real Caleb Graham type areas.
Right. Very interesting. Well, look, he's a young key forward, Gold Coast on the up, new coach.
He's gonna be incredible.
he will be a good forward eventually. Oh, I just went a bit early saying it was this year.
He might very well win one. I wouldn't be surprised.
It wouldn't be surprised if he does. Yeah.
Look, if Gold Coast jump into the 8 next year, I'd say he'll be
He's going to be a part
very
of it.
high up there. I don't know if he'll be in calculations next year, but
it's
not awful.
Him and Jack Lukosius are a serious key forward duo. Sorry, it's if they can both turn it on next year with Dimmer, it's
Scary.
Next, the rising star. We all had the same name, and it wasn't a bad prediction at all. Just wasn't the right prediction. We all had Will Ashcroft. Jacko, what were your thoughts on his season? And of course, the injury that ended up rubbing him out a little bit too early.
It was an incredible season. I think if he plays the full year, it's really close. Not to not to discount the season that Harry Sheasel had by any stretch. I think we all just bought into the hype of Will Ashcroft, hearing his name for a year and a half before he was even drafted, seeing him play in the VFL in his draft year, and just seeing him in the preseason. He looked incredible, and he was incredible. Winning, goal of the year in your first season, just wasn't to be. Harry Sheasel was just incredible all year, winning a best and fairest as well.
100%. Carl, do you echo all those statements?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it would have been Ashcroft had he played the last few games. Unfortunately, doing the ACL, which will probably rub him out for the majority of next year. But it was his to lose. Up until that point, he was pretty comfortably the leader in my eyes. Just unfortunate.
Well, the good thing is we've got a couple of bloody superstars there in Ashcroft and Sheasel, and it'll be very interesting to see how their careers pan out. Next up, the surprise All-Australian. Now, we'll start with you, Cal. Who did you have?
I went with Chad Warner. I
not bad.
At the start of the year, I jumped on the train because he had a really impressive 22, and I was going, this kid is going to go nuts. It was good. He wasn't really close to All-Australian caliber.
You picked the wrong one of the dynamic duo.
Yeah, I should have gone with Errol. Errol would have been the very smart choice.
I think Errol just overshadowed Chad because Chad was still great.
He was.
Errol's last 2 months was just ridiculous.
How many votes did he end up getting? Was it 20 odd in 8 games?
Yeah, I think at one point he had 22 out of a possible 27.
That's absurd. That is absurd.
Insane. Jacko, yours came very close. So I think you're going to have a little bit to say about it. What do you make of your surprise All-Australian prediction?
Rowan Marshall. Look, stiff. It's not stiff. Tim English deserved that ruck spot. Tim English deserved it. Gawn and Grundy, I was pretty confident saying, neither of them would get it playing in the same team. So it was a battle between Marshall and English. English was just the better player. No ruckman on the bench this year. It's a bit, I thought that might have been able to scrape me in, but unfortunately not. We go again next year.
Well, that's the thing. Some may make the case that there should be 2 ruckmen in that team, especially when you have one like Rowan Marshall who's not making the team and played as well as he has. But I mean,
yeah, but you'll agree with me here. Nick Larkey deserved to be in that team, and you can't take him off the bench for him. So yeah, I'm okay to lose this prediction to see Nick Larkey in that team.
Yeah, I had Hayden Young, and I mean, look, well, obviously I had Freo 4th, so kind of goes along with that I thought defensively they were still going to be as good as they were defensively in their final season, and Hayden Young would sort of be a centerpiece of that. But
So, do you blame Hayden Young for getting your Freo prediction wrong? Is that what
Not-
you're doing right now?
not in the slightest. Hayden, if you're watching this, I don't think you're watching this, but if you are, I'm not blaming you. I promise. It was just something that went wrong along the way. You're a good kid. You're going to be a good player. But we will swiftly move on from that to recruit of the year. I'll start. I said Josh Dunkley. Look, I mean, again, not a bad call. I think he was brilliant for the Lions. He played some really good games, and obviously in the end they couldn't triumph. They couldn't win the premiership, but if they had won that game, he would have been a huge part of it. So I'm pretty happy with my Josh Dunkley call there. Jacko, who did you have?
I had Tim Taranto, which personally I think he was probably second. I actually, despite Richmond not being any good for most of the year, I think Tim Taranto was incredible. He was absolutely ridiculous and probably, like I said, like the second best inclusion this year. The best is by far Bobby Hill. Like he was just bonkers all year. You can't win a Norm Smith and not be the best recruit. But yeah,
exactly. Yeah, no, Tim Taranto was arguably the Brownlow favourite for a couple of weeks there in the middle of the season as well. Just unbelievable recruit for Richmond, and hopefully, if they happen to bounce back next year, he'll be a huge centre point of that. Cal, I love your recruit of the year because he took the big stage at the end of the year and he did a massive job. Talk about Blake Acres for me.
Mr. Acres. Brendan, as Carlton fans, we now absolutely love this man. He kicked the match winner in 2 finals. That doesn't happen so often. He had a very good year before that as well. I was very impressed with this year. I said at the start of the year, it's very hard to find a genuine winger. And I think we've seen a bit of an immersion in the whole league of genuine wingers. Like we've seen the likes of Errol and Josh Dacos and Nick Martin. Akers is now, not on that level, but he is a genuine winger. I love seeing genuine wingers on the big stage kicking finals goals. No, it's good seeing the genuine wingers finally get some recognition as well in the All-Australian sort of counts.
100%. We love Blake Acres. He did a brilliant job in the final series and had a great second half of the season as well, despite a somewhat slow start, some might say. Set for a breakout season. We'll go back to you, Carl, to start with this one, because I really like your one as well. And there's one game in particular that you may want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Finn McInnes was his breakout year. I mean, he was good last year, but this was his year to establish himself as like the league's best tagger. And I think it's fantastic that the league has a tagger that they can sort of rely on. The one game in particular, that game against the Pies on Nick Dacos, before he got injured. But I mean, he kept him to 5 touches. Got a goal in the end, but to keep at that point the Brownlow leader to 5 touches is something that needs to be applauded.
Absolutely sensational. You had another Finn, Jacko. Who did you have?
I did. I had Finn Callan. I love this kid. He is going to be a star. Some of the things he did this season with that Rising Giant side were just incredible. He just has a massive tank. I was lucky enough to see it in the preseason games. I saw it when I was at Giants training. He is just going to keep improving. He was good on the wing. When he gets the keys to that midfield and gets in there consistently with Tom Green, it is going to be a serious midfield that's going to cause some problems for the rest of the league. So I was really happy. I thought he had a really good breakout season this year as well.
100%. I thought he was great for the Giants as well. I had Elijah Hollins. Obviously, didn't quite come to fruition the way we expected. I think he played 9 or 10 games. However, he's currently rumoured to be making his way to Carlton next year to link up with his brother Ollie. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. But hopefully, he can have that breakout season next year for the Blues. But we'll see what happens there. Finally, the headline you'll see at some point in 2023. We all had one of these. I think we'll start with mine. So I feel like it might be the biggest stinker here. So, as we know, I had Freo 4th on the ladder. They ended up finishing, whopping, what was it?
15th, I think.
14th.
14th place. Lovely. My headline was here to stay. Dockers dismantle the Bulldogs to make it 6-0 for the year.
Did they even win that game?
Not 6-0. Did they win the game? That's a very interesting question.
I'm almost certain
they lost by
didn't.
49 points.
Okay, well, good effort.
Yeah,
Not
and
really
at that point in the season, on the ladder, they were, bear with me for 2 seconds, 13th. They were 2-4.
Yeah, it was.
Not your finest work.
Hands up.
No,
I'll take ownership. I thought the Dockers were going to be superb this year, and as we said before, if they get it together, they can maybe get back up there. But 6-0 was well and truly off the mark.
Look, with these headlines, you just have to go big or go home. Like that's
exactly
that's your one thing you got to do.
Yeah, Jacko, we'll go to your headline next. Master teaches apprentice a few tricks. North Melbourne beat Hawthorn.
Yeah, look, there was a lot of build up to that game. I just expected the North boys to get over the top. I thought it was happening. When North were 2-0 to start the year, I was like, we're on here. Come on, the Clarko boys. North are winning the flag.
And then it went spiraling downhill.
Yeah, I did. In Tassie, man, the Hawks are just a different beast. It's crazy. Hawthorn were really good that game. Sam Mitchell got the chockies over his old coach, and I think it's a nice little coaching rivalry for years to come. Obviously, the media are building it up. There's no animosity between the two coaches, but I think there's a little bit of something there we'll get to enjoy the next few years.
100%. It'll be a great battle, and ultimately as well, they only lost the game by 3 goals, so not the most terrible headline in the end. Cal, Suns heartbreak, first finals appearance, so close yet so far. Probably a little further than we expected. Do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a really good year for the Suns. They showed signs of it in 22, which is what we could really base our predictions off. And they were around the mark, around the mid-season. But then when they needed to lift the most in the back half, they just fell off and never really looked competitive. I think it was after the Blues game in particular, where the Blues looked at rock bottom. The Suns were amongst the finals contenders. It was almost like they just did a complete backflip on each other, and the Suns just went backwards and backwards. And I'm not so mad with that prediction. There were certainly better ones that I could have had, but is what it is.
Definitely. And now with Dimmer coming on board, maybe they'll come a lot closer.
Rewrite that headline.
Maybe they'll make the 8 next year. You never know. But we'll see what happens. Boys, before I outro this video, we'll start with you, Jacko. Do you have any final words, anything you want to tell the people before we close it out?
I'm sorry. I had some terrible predictions. But I'd do it again. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I stand by everything I said. They were just terrible. The league failed me this year. I think my predictions were spot on. I didn't account for injuries. I'll have to rerun the numbers, and we'll load up again next year.
Cal, do you have any words?
Yeah, I'll echo that and say we are sorry. We are all sorry. We were absolutely abysmal this year. It is often hard to get predictions at the start of the year, but to get teams that are like more than 10 positions off where they finished it needs another rejig.
100%. I'll follow up by saying predictions are predictions. We're going to be wrong every year in some respect, and this year we just happened to be extremely wrong. And I will also apologize for some of the absolute howlers we had, but we'll be back next year to do the exact same thing.
Get them all wrong again.
Richmond flag 2024, lock it in.
We'll see about that. But with that, thank you for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe to House of Footy, the home of your footy fix. Jacko, thank you for coming along.
Thank you, mate. Always good to be here.
Callan, thank you.
Thank you. It's good fun.
Don't forget to give this one a share, and you can find us on all social media platforms at House of Footy AU. We'll see you next time.